Why would anyone leave a six-figure salary to follow their passion to do more in their community? Well, that's the question that Kelsey Medard answered for us in our last episode. We talked about her passion, we talked about diversity and inclusion, and we talked about what it takes to actually be equitable in business. I invite you to listen to her episode. But before you do that, listen to this episode with Kevin McDonald. Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in. Kevin McDonald is the University of Virginia's Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Partnerships. He joined UVA after serving as the Chief Diversity Officer and Vice Chancellor for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at the University of Missouri System and the University of Missouri, Columbia. Prior to the University of Missouri System and flagship campus, Kevin held positions at several other universities, including as Vice President and Associate Provost for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Rochester Institute of Technology, Vice President for Equity and Inclusion at Virginia Tech, and Associate Director for Compliance and Conflict Resolution at Johns Hopkins University. Kevin McDonald holds a law degree from Ohio State University and a doctoral degree in higher education leadership from the University of Rochester. He received his undergraduate degree in psychology from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is where I had the honor and the privilege of meeting my lifelong friend. Hey, Kevin, it is so good to have you here. How are you?
I am doing very well. I'm always reminded when I get asked that question. I used to go to this grocery store when I was in the Maryland, D.C. area, and we would ask this person that who worked there, and he would say, I'm super fantastic and I'm getting better. So I always wanted that kind of energy when I was asking the question. I am super fantastic and I'm getting better. So
That's awesome. I love that answer. I might have to adopt that one too.
Right.
Fantastic, and I'm getting better. Absolutely. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what are you passionate about right now?
At this particular moment in time, just given what's happening in our nation and our world, I'm passionate about issues centered on race. I'm passionate about notions of racial equity. I'm passionate about eradicating systemic racism and those things that have served as impediments to progress for Black people for years. I think I'm passionate about just leveraging my role, my work, my spheres of influence to affect change in the spaces that I occupy. So I will say that has definitely taken up a lot of airtime in my mind, for sure, in addition to like family and everything else. But for me, for work related, it's definitely centered around issues, longstanding issues of race, and utilizing this time, but also my platform to try to identify different outcomes that we can point to and say, wow, in 2020, this was really different in this space that I occupy at the organization that I worked. The hope that maybe it'll have a spillover effect to other organizations, and that, quite honestly, there will be other people within this space of influence that are also impacting their organizations in the same way.
Wow. Isn't it awesome that you get to work in what you're passionate about? I think that's pretty awesome. Not a lot of people get to do that.
No, it's true. I was having this conversation with aspiring law students yesterday, and they said, well, they wanted me to help them understand how they might choose their future employment when they have issues like loans, or when they when when what they make might be at an issue. And I just told them that I think that it's so important to do something that they enjoy, that they're passionate about. I always tell people, operate at the intersection of your passion and what you believe your purpose is. And if you do
Yeah.
that, then it will never feel like work, right? And so I know that there are other issues and obligations that you have, from finances or supporting of your family. But oftentimes, if you can do that and you're methodical about it, the financial support that you're seeking will come. It may not be immediate, but it will come. And so yeah, I count it a tremendous blessing to be able to be in a space that I'm just passionate about. I love the people that I get to serve and impact. I'm driven by the work. So
Nice. I love it. So, is your superpower then tied into your passion? What is your superpower?
yeah, I would say, I guess if I had a superpower, I don't know that I would maybe couch it as a superpower. I'd probably say it feels to me that it's a lost form of interaction and influence, but it's my ability, I think, to connect with people and to forge lasting relationships. Relationships for me, I think, are paramount to success. I just think that from a leadership standpoint, we don't have that same level of investment in relationships. And so oftentimes leaders associate productivity with their own level of acumen in the field that they are, but not with the relationships that they forge and build that, quite honestly, also have influence. And so for me, I think relationships are paramount. I want people to have met with me, leaving a meeting with me feeling like they didn't have a meeting, but they've had an experience. And I think that's just important. I just don't know that we commit to doing enough of that, but I try to do it in a way that people consistently, it doesn't matter if you're a student or a seasoned alum, that everybody feels like I've treated them the same, and that I'm authentic, that I'm engaged, that I am at times vulnerable, that I don't overpromise and underdeliver, and that I'm visible, right? And that I care about what they care about. So, yeah, to me, I just feel like that we don't see enough of that. So it feels like this kind of lost art of engagement. But I guess if that was considered a superpower, then that would be mine.
Well, that is a superpower, and I believe that that truly is your superpower. I think that we are similar in that fashion. I think that we both are people who connect well with others authentically in a way that allows us to, I don't know, affect change where someone else might not. And so we need a lot of people like you around. So
yeah, like you and me. That's right.
like us
Right.
around. Right. And talking about your tenure, so share something that's happened over the course of your tenure, which means in any of the positions that you've had, that has happened that people wouldn't normally believe did or can happen, but that actually did happen. And in your position, I think that you probably would have had a solution that came to fruition, or maybe not, but what is something that has happened?
Yeah, so I worked at an institution a while back, and there was a provost there. Provost is the top academic leader at the university, so usually the number two, right under the president or the chancellor. And the provost really wanted to do a really good thing. He wanted to build in a requirement for all faculty to, in their annual kind of faculty annual reports, to report on diversity, their diversity efforts. So we all were like, wow, this is great. This is real progressive. We were so excited about that. And a conservative think tank group got a wind of that and kind of blasted the university for doing it. And it went really public, and the president got really skittish and came out with an announcement that they were removing that requirement. The campus just went ballistic. I mean, it were just protests, signs that the institution doesn't care about Black people, that, or diversity. And there was going to be this call by faculty, staff, and students to the board to go a vote of no confidence in the president. I mean, that they no longer believed in the president. And so I was navigating these two spaces, one as an administrator, and who I reported to the president, and the president had just told everyone in his cabinet and his top administration that his decision was final, and that if anyone had a difficult time dealing with his decision, he would accept a resignation on the spot. And I was also dealing with a community that I was trying to engage in dialogue with, who were probably, a little bit skeptical of it, someone in administration, to try to see, okay, are there any ways that we can engage in dialogue? So I finally got the community to agree to engage with the president
Mm-hmm.
in a dialogue. And so the president, I had encouraged him to come in and just, if he was going to bring any other members of the cabinet, just mix in with the community members. And when he came, he didn't. He kind of formed one line. It was kind of an us versus them.
Right.
And I remember that there was a spokesperson, a tenured faculty member, who was kind of representing the group and had just some thoughts, almost like a list of recommendations or demands. And she also had an additional list for the president. And so she was going through that list. She gave the list to the president, and the president took it and threw it to the ground. And I was like, oh my goodness. I just saw like light just flash before my eyes. Like, oh, and I don't know if we had cell phones at the time, but if so, I would have texted my wife and said, look, we need to start looking for another job. So I waited for what felt like eternity, but probably was just a couple of minutes. And I told the president to remember when we were together in a one-on-one conversation that I said he had to really invest in a way that was not adversarial, in a way that was going to give this the best opportunity to kind of get important stories on the table. And it would be hard to do that or imagine doing that if he starts out in this adversarial way by throwing us on the ground. So I'm going to ask him to do what's going to be uncomfortable for him, but it's also uncomfortable for me to ask. And that is, I'm going to ask him to pick up the paper and ask the representative if we could start again. And it seemed like another eternity, but it probably was another couple of minutes. But he did pick it up, and the person did start over, and it ultimately resulted in close to $1 million in annual support to support diversity. I mean, we ultimately were able to kind of negotiate and move forward. And so, it definitely was a learning experience for me about navigating issues of conflict and constituents and communities when it comes up. But I'm grateful again for the exposure to it. I wasn't at the time, but I reflect back on it. It was an experience that I learned a lot from, and it's continued to help shape who I am. I don't run from conflict. I feel like I'm battle tested, right? And so I always, every place I go now, I treat it, it's like my Frank Sinatra approach, because if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. So, so, but it was definitely an experience that many don't believe, until you tell them, like, wow, that really could happen. So.
Right. And I think, first I have to commend you for, standing up and saying and being in that space and being that very uncomfortable space of saying, look, this is not going to work. So this is what you need to do. But then having him go ahead and do it, that is something. One of the things that I tell people a lot is when you're in this space, when you're learning about true diversity, equity, inclusion, co-conspirators, social justice, when you're learning about these things and you're learning something about the history of this country and the systems that are in place, it's uncomfortable. It's gonna be uncomfortable. But learning to navigate that discomfort, which is what I think you just said with that story, is allows you to then feel a little battle tested, feel like you can go for the next step, feel like you can go for the next thing, because, okay, I did that. I didn't die, it didn't kill me. I'm still here. So I can take that next step and keep going, right?
Yeah, I think you have to lean in, right? It's just important to kind of lean into those situations. I think organizations are inherently conflict averse. And so when issues or conflicts arise, it's just a natural default to try to sweep it under the rug and not deal with it because you don't feel equipped to deal with it. So I actually think it's important to people to kind of have those tools in their toolbox, right? To be able to navigate those situations when they arise and to be able to lean into that situation to see what you can do to create meaningful dialogue to resolve it.
It's not easy, but it is definitely necessary, and it's definitely, that's what moves the needle. Comfort doesn't move the needle, right?
It's true.
Everybody just stay in their comfort zone, be comfortable, get back to status quo, quote unquote. That's not what makes change. What makes change is the discomfort. So, in your opinion, what opportunities do you feel are missed when it comes to companies being more diverse, equitable, or inclusive?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the probably the inclusion and inclusive part of that
Yeah,
equation. I mean, I think companies for a very long time, looked at diversity as a moral imperative, right? It's the right thing to do, but didn't
right,
actually associate it with their bottom line, meaning that if I can have a more diverse organization, if I can have these diverse perspectives and
right.
leverage those in a way that's inclusive, I can actually be more productive and increase my
Right,
earning potential or productivity. I mean, so that's I think it's an opportunity now that more organizations are leaning into for sure. I would say
right.
number one, and then the inclusion part of that. This notion of diversity is I define it broadly as the various mix or combinations of human differences, but inclusion is ultimately how are we leveraging, optimizing, utilizing those differences in
Right.
ways that people possessing them feel valued and respected and engaged, but also in ways
Yes.
that move the organization forward. So again, this notion of actually leveraging them, because I don't think anyone should have to check who they are when they enter these working environments on a daily basis, right? To just
Right.
assimilate into the culture of the organization. So if they can bring their whole selves to work in ways that they feel valued and respected and leveraged for the skills, talents, and abilities that they possess, and that is making you one very strong and productive organization. So I just think that's something that companies need to be engaged with more and just see the connection and see how that leverages to impact their bottom line. And then build in accountability measures with leaders in their organizations for those as metrics, right? What are the leaders doing to actually utilize those perspectives and differences within their units to move the organization forward and impact the bottom line?
Right. I talk about that a lot too. In my workshop, I say, the cost, just the sheer cost of racism is incredible to companies and to everyone, really. People think that, oh well, it doesn't affect me because I am not part of a marginalized group. I am not part of the quote unquote diverse group. But it does affect you because when it affects your company, when it affects the productivity, when it affects the innovation, it affects you. It affects us all. And so let's say we hired someone who is, so we talk about diversity. When I talk about diversity, I'm just not talking about racial diversity. I'm talking about gender and ableism and religious and that sort of diversity, the whole gamut that it could be. So let's say we hired someone who was, let's say we hired a Jewish person. How could we make a space more inclusive for them? Because we know that culturally they have holidays in which they can't work, they have they might have a different diet, certain things like that. So how are ways that we could actually be more inclusive in
Yeah,
a company?
some organizations have what they would call a type of inclusion calendar, right? And so, in addition to a kind of a company calendar, it would actually mark those notable holidays depending on the kind of religion or beliefs that may exist, not just in the organization but in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And what they would have is a key that would note dietary restrictions or note meeting restrictions in case that there are certain members within the organization that might have and hold that belief or faith that might be required to eat differently or might be required to not be able to attend meetings so that they won't necessarily hold a meeting on that day or may not
Right.
offer items if there is a meeting that would be against whatever the dietary restrictions might be for that day. So I am appreciative of organizations that are really intentional about that because one of the worst things that you can do as an organization is, say that you're inclusive, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately your actions don't match your rhetoric, right? And so in that
Mm-hmm.
regard, you'll have all sorts of meetings, on a Jewish holiday or not
Mm-hmm.
some of the same dietary restrictions that might need to take place because of what Jewish colleagues might be, adhering to on that particular day. So I just think that inclusion, again, has to be more than, a statement on an organization's website or a job description, but it actually has to be
Right.
so that any member of your community says, no, they really kind of walk the talk, and here's how I know that, right? And so sometimes there are some great inclusion calendars, diversity and inclusion calendars that will actually give a summary of the holiday itself, its meaning, dietary restriction keys, and meeting keys, which I think can be incredibly valuable because not everybody can memorize, right, all of those
Of
holidays.
course.
It's important to
Right.
be able to reflect back when you're thinking about a meeting. You could look at that and say,
Yeah.
okay, we're thinking about this particular date. Oh, we can't do that because it's Rosh
Mm-hmm.
Hashanah, or
Mm-hmm.
something. So, yep.
Wow, I've never heard of that, and I think that that is a brilliant idea because then, like you said, you don't have to check part of you at the door when you come into work. You can bring your whole self and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't go to that meeting because of this and that," and then other people in the organization could go, "Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I failed to check our calendar," or "Yes, what day works better," and that goes to equity, right? Giving people what they need in order to be successful in what it is that they're doing.
Right.
I think there are too many negative connotations attached to the words diversity and equity and inclusion when there really doesn't need to be. It's really just taking people as they are and saying, "Oh, what are your needs?" I mean, isn't that what we do normally? I mean, especially when we're trying to make friends, or
Right.
we have people come to our house and say, "Hey, would you like a drink?" "Oh, I don't drink." "Oh, that's okay. I have seltzer, or I have juice. I have, tea. What can you drink? What would you like?" We accommodate so that we can be friends and we can learn. And then we can ask, "Oh, so you don't drink? Is that a religious preference?" Whatever the case may be, but it just brings dialogue, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I like that idea of the calendar. That sounds good. So you and I are sitting on the back porch 2 years from now, and we're having a conversation. We're celebrating something that has happened. What do you think has happened in the educational landscape regarding equity, diversity, inclusion that would have us celebrating on the back porch?
I think we probably have more than a critical mass of institutions, predominantly white institutions, that are leaning in and grappling intentional ways with their kind of racist past, with their history with regard to slavery, similar to
Right.
UVA, similar to institutions like Princeton has done recently. But I think we'll have more institutions, many more now, that have said, you know what, the time is now. We have to do it. And I think that is significant because a year ago, there's no way, even just a year ago, that we would have thought about a critical number of institutions, even UVA,
Yeah.
grappling with it like that. So I think there will be just consistently more institutions. I mean, I heard from a colleague at Auburn, they're doing it. I heard from a colleague at Michigan State, they're doing it. I mean, it is
Nice.
happening. And so that, again, to your point and mine about kind of ripples and waves, it's heartwarming to see. It's so important now, and it's the easy default is when you have what we call a diversity crisis or something that happens to
Right.
ignite things. That some people try to wait it out and say, well, let the dust settle, and then we can go back to the way things were. And I just think we're having where the conversations are now, by and large, a lot of institutions are like, we can't go back to the way things were. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
have to do something in this moment. So I do think that will be a significant piece moving forward. I think just given the age of COVID as well,
Right.
and its own disproportionate impact,
Yeah.
to historically marginalized communities, I just think that we're also going to have are going to be a number of kind of virtual hybrids. I just think virtual pieces are going to be here to stay as well. So I think
I
that higher education or beyond, I just think that it's just going to be much more commonplace for kind of the thinking of virtual, not just virtual classes, but instead of having maybe a number of speakers that just fly, take time to come to the institution, I think they're going to be speaking from wherever they're located currently. I just think it's going to be an easier way, much more accepted form to do and engage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I tend to agree with you. My husband's a professor and he's been home since March, of course, since everybody was told to go home and work from home. And now he's going, well, maybe I should do more of my classes this way. Let me find out if I could do it this way, because it works well for him. He has MS, and getting around, it's a challenge, but it's not as challenging as it's gonna be. But I'm like, looking down the line, that may be what works for you. Being able to just do it online, and you do it well. You engage your students, because he's a theater major, undergrad, so he's always trying to find ways to engage the students. So he incorporates some of his theatrical background. So but yeah. So here's a question I have for you, and I've heard some murmurings back and forth about it, is that as more institutions, more schools, and more companies are looking to do or have someone on campus or in the company that is working on diversity, equity, and inclusion, should that be a space that is exclusively racially diverse? Meaning,
I would say no. I don't think so. It's not one of those spaces that should just be reserved. Particularly the more that we are truly being an inclusive organization in general, and opportunities for these type of leadership roles in general are hopefully becoming much more diverse. I think it should be a space just reserved for people who are really, truly invested and engaged in that work. I think it just so happens that there is a benefit, for me at least, as an African American, and I'm engaging particularly in some of our communities of color. There is an easier form of kind of gaining access initially,
right,
as one that can either understand or empathize with some of the insights that they're going to share on their own lived experiences. That has been helpful. But I work with some amazing and have colleagues across the nation with some amazing practitioners in this field, scholars in this space, who are awesome, who are wonderful, and I would go into kind of battle with them 10 times out of 10. So I think
right,
it's reserved to people who are truly, authentically passionate about this work, dedicated to this work, and are not trying to live for the moment. I've been in this work, in this space for 20 years, and I remember with a boss that I had, a great friend and mentor too, when I was at Johns Hopkins University. He said, well, Kevin, you'll probably want to look for another field, because this diversity thing will probably phase out at some point. I was like, wow, you think so? So we always laugh about it now, because I was like, phase out? It is probably quadrupled since then. So, there is such an important need, and with every new crisis, it almost solidifies the importance of our work and the importance of this role. So I think what's most needed is just people who are dedicated, who are creative and innovative, who are savvy and understand how to navigate complex organizational environments, for sure. And like I said, who are relationship driven and just authentic and transparent. I just think those are the people we need consistently, no matter what identity they are.
right. Nice. Okay. So if you were to step into my shoes right now, is there something that I did not ask you that you would like to have been asked? And if so, please go ahead and answer.
Yeah. No, I would, this is my Oprah moment. I'm so excited. Yeah, you know what? If I was in your shoes right now, I would say, Kevin, and you get a car, and you get a car.
Well, let me call Oprah.
Right, Oprah, where's my gift, right, for coming on your show? No, it was good. I enjoyed it, and hopefully those who listen into this experience that you're offering and providing for the world will enjoy it as well. So hopefully I've offered something that will resonate with people.
Oh, I'm sure you have. My goal is to simply share the conversations, share the information, and also the solutions, the suggested solutions, and then just to get people's minds working towards what they may be blind to, because we're all blind to certain things that don't impact our lives directly. And so what they may be blind to and saying, oh, wow, okay, so now how can I be a force for change in that area or with that situation? So when the time comes that we lose you, Kevin, which I hope is a long ways away, what is one thing you want people to remember about you? What is it that you would like for them to say about you?
Yeah, I think that I was a person with the utmost integrity, that I cared about people to the day that I died, that I passed, that I lived life authentically, that I was humble and modest. I think if I had those consistent words mentioned about my life's work, then I would be satiated to the tilt. You know, I mean, I think that I live my life for that. Like I'm not into titles and roles. I'm into impact and just authentic relationships and caring about and serving people. I'm definitely a servant leader for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want
Yeah.
people to reflect on, and it's tough being in administration because, you know, I mean, it's tough. You know, in my own community, you could have some people that say, well, you know, we don't know. He's a member of administration, so is he down or is he an Uncle Tom, right? I mean,
Right.
is he the house Negro, right? Or
Yep.
right? But you also and you have skepticism as well. You know, with anyone, it could be based on your predecessor or based on their assumptions attached to the role. But I just want people to know that, you know, I just care deeply about this work and that I'm just authentically dedicated to trying to positively impact the lives of others and work collaboratively and bring a collaborative spirit to do it, right?
I love it. I love it. Well, I think you're on the right track. And I think that you've always been that person. So I think that people will say those things about you. And so my final question, which I like to ask all of my guests, is what is your favorite dish and why?
Well, it's going to be weird to say, I
It's
think,
okay.
but my favorite dish is culture, right? So, I mean, I have this cross. My father's Jamaican, my mother's Bermudian. So my father has rice and peas, my mother has peas and rice. But rice and peas is a starch dish, right? It's my favorite dish. I think just because I feel like I perfected it, right? I mean,
Ooh.
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, right? And so, you know, sometimes they question my Jamaican roots, right? So I got to bring it out, you know what I mean? With my coconut milk, you know, my gunga peas, my pigeon peas, and gotta fry
Yes.
it a little bit, you know what I mean? And you can make your oxtail or your jerk chicken, but watch when I bring the starch dish out. Look at that. Look at that. So yeah, that's my one favorite. Yeah,
That's your one. Oh my
favorite.
goodness. Well,
And
that's right. You
I know it's my favorite because even when my daughters come in town or something, like, Dad, are you gonna make rice and peas? I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, I got you, I got you. It's one of those I know I can at least pass that recipe down. Like they want me to teach them how to do it. They
That's
don't care,
right.
you know, they don't care about my other vegan stuff, but they care about that one.
they're like they're like, no, please don't, not that stuff. This
Right, not
one
that.
right here. Let's just do this one. We'll be
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Right,
That's awesome when you let them know that you got that blood running through you and you can throw it down.
right. That's right. I will.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for being on. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, my friend.
It was great hanging with you as always. I've been so just pleased to just see your growth and your impact in our nation and world. Is with whatever you take on to do, you do it, and you do it, you know, with a drive and determination, and nobody's gonna stop you. So I love to see you playing in this diversity, equity, inclusion space. I look forward to seeing what you do in the years ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I've got some plans, so we'll see.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have
All
a
right.
great day. And, hug, love, and kisses to your wife and to your girl.
Thank much. Same to your family as well.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, remember to subscribe, download, rate, review, and share, because it's really no fun if your friends don't know what you're talking about. Make sure to join us next time when we'll be talking to Goddess.